The evening was quiet, unusually quiet for the city. The streets were empty, save for a few cars moving slowly under the dim glow of streetlights. A seasoned FBI director, known for her calm demeanor and sharp instincts, was driving home after a long day at the bureau. She had spent hours reviewing cases, coordinating with teams, and dealing with high-pressure situations that demanded precision and composure. Now, finally, she was on her way home, looking forward to a quiet night. Her car moved steadily along the familiar route she had driven countless times. The night was calm, almost too calm, and she felt a small sense of relief. It was rare for her to have a moment of peace, and she welcomed the silence. But suddenly, the red and blue flashing lights appeared in her rearview mirror. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel for a brief moment. Instinctively alert, she assumed it was a routine traffic stop, something she had seen countless times in her career. But deep down, she sensed that this stop might be different. Calmly, she signaled and pulled over to the side of the road. She turned off the engine and kept her hands visible on the steering wheel. A uniformed officer approached her car, his hand hovering near his firearm. She noticed the rigidity in his stance, the tension in his movements, and something about it felt off. She knew the signs. He was nervous, unsure, and ready to react at a moment's notice. The officer ordered her to exit the vehicle. Surprised but composed, she followed the command. Her training kicked in, reminding her to stay calm, to keep her hands visible, and to communicate clearly. But still, the situation was surreal. She was someone who had spent her life upholding the law, leading investigations and making decisions in life-or-death situations. Now she was on the other side, facing a law enforcement officer with his gun drawn. She stepped out slowly, hands raised just below shoulder height, showing she was unarmed. Her mind raced through possible scenarios. She needed to remain calm, to de-escalate the situation, to ensure that no one was hurt. Around her, the city seemed to have paused. The quiet streets, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional flicker of neon lights from a nearby store, all of it contrasted sharply with the tension between her and the officer. "I am an FBI director," she said calmly, her voice steady. "I will comply with your instructions, but please be aware of my identity. I can show you my credentials." The officer hesitated, unsure of what to do. He radioed for backup, escalating the situation further. The director remained composed, careful not to make sudden movements. She kept her eyes on him, watching for any signs of aggression or confusion. She had trained others for years on how to handle high-pressure encounters, yet here she was, relying on the same principles herself. Moments felt like hours as the officer maintained his grip on the firearm. He seemed conflicted, uncertain whether to trust her words. Each second was heavy with tension. She could see the fear and doubt in his eyes, and she knew that any wrong move could trigger disaster. Her experience told her to stay calm, to speak clearly, and to avoid confrontation. She spoke slowly, explaining who she was, her role, and that she posed no threat. As the minutes passed, the officer's body language began to change slightly. He looked toward his radio, trying to confirm the information. Her credentials were visible, professional, undeniable. Yet he remained cautious. The streetlights cast shadows over the scene, making it look even more dramatic than it already was. The quiet city, the tense standoff, the single officer facing a high-ranking FBI official. It was a situation neither of them could have anticipated. From a distance, a few drivers slowed down, noticing the unusual interaction. Some pulled out their phones, capturing the scene. The director kept her focus on the officer, not on the onlookers. She knew that remaining composed was the key to preventing escalation. Every word, every gesture, every pause was calculated to keep the situation under control. Finally, backup arrived. Additional officers approached cautiously, assessing the situation. The first officer's posture stiffened even more as his colleagues stepped out of their vehicles. The director reiterated her identity, showing her credentials clearly to everyone present. The air of tension began to shift slightly as the arriving officers recognized the significance of the situation. The first officer lowered his weapon slowly, visibly shaken. He had realized the gravity of his mistake, though the moment was still heavy with the possibility of things going wrong. The director remained calm, her voice steady, explaining that the situation was a misunderstanding, but emphasizing the importance of careful assessment and communication. Witnesses in the area shared their observations, confirming that the director had acted calmly and posed no threat. The scene, once tense and frightening, began to settle into a state of controlled awareness. Yet the experience left a lasting impression on everyone involved. It was a stark reminder of how quickly a situation could escalate, how perception and reality could diverge, and how crucial composure and clear communication were in moments of crisis. The director reflected internally on what had just happened. Despite the fear and tension, she was impressed with her own ability to stay calm. Her years of experience had taught her to handle high-pressure situations, but this was a different kind of challenge, one where she was the subject of scrutiny and potential danger. It reinforced her belief in the importance of patience, clarity, and professionalism. The officers involved were aware that this encounter would not be forgotten quickly. The first officer who had pulled her over seemed to understand the consequences of his actions. Backup officers discussed the situation quietly among themselves, reviewing protocols and procedures. The director's composure became a model for how to handle unexpected, dangerous encounters without escalating them further. As the director prepared to leave, the officers ensured she was safe to continue her journey. The encounter ended without physical harm, but the psychological weight of the experience lingered. She had been reminded that authority alone could not prevent danger, and that human error, even in trained professionals, could create life-threatening situations. Driving away, the director reflected on the lessons learned. She knew this incident would be studied, discussed, and remembered within law enforcement circles. It would serve as a case study on the importance of verification, communication, and restraint. Most importantly, it highlighted the need for empathy and understanding even in high-stakes scenarios. The night returned to its quiet state, the city streets once again empty and peaceful. But the director carried with her a renewed awareness of vulnerability and the human side of law enforcement. She had faced a situation that tested her training, patience, and composure, and she had navigated it successfully. The encounter would leave a mark, shaping her approach to leadership, communication, and safety in ways that would influence her work for years to come. The morning after the terrifying stop, the FBI director woke up with a strange mixture of relief and disbelief. She had faced one of the most unusual situations in her life, and it was impossible to shake the memory from her mind. Even after years of working in law enforcement, dealing with dangerous situations and high-pressure investigations, she had never imagined being at gunpoint by another officer. She poured herself a cup of coffee, trying to calm her nerves, but the incident kept replaying in her head. She knew she had to report everything in detail to ensure the situation was fully understood. The encounter had been tense and dangerous, and it highlighted the potential risks even for those who were highly trained. She began documenting the events, writing down every word spoken, every gesture, and the sequence of actions taken by the officer. Her account was precise, calm, and professional, reflecting the seriousness of the situation. Within hours, her report reached the Internal Affairs Department. The moment the document landed on their desks, it sparked immediate attention. An experienced team of investigators began reviewing the body camera footage, traffic camera clips, and witness statements. The officer's conduct was under scrutiny. From the footage, it was clear that the officer had acted hastily, failing to verify the identity of the FBI director before escalating the situation. It was a rare but critical lapse of judgment that could have ended tragically. The director knew that emotions would run high, both among the public and within law enforcement circles. Her priority was not only her own safety, but also ensuring that the situation became a learning experience for everyone involved. She wanted to make sure that no one else would face a similar misunderstanding. She worked closely with the investigative team, explaining how the stop had unfolded and what steps could have been handled differently to prevent escalation. As the investigation progressed, discussions began about the officer's training, behavior, and mindset at the time of the stop. It became clear that fear and misjudgment had played a large role. The officer had been following standard protocols, but his approach had lacked critical verification. It was a mistake born not from malice, but from a combination of nervousness, assumptions, and incomplete information. Meanwhile, the director's colleagues were stunned. They had known her as someone who faced danger calmly and strategically every day. Yet here she was, caught in a situation that left her vulnerable despite her experience. Conversations among Bureau Staff revolved around how even the most skilled law enforcement professionals could find themselves in unexpected and frightening circumstances. It was a humbling reminder of human vulnerability. The media soon caught wind of the story, though details were initially vague. Some reports focused on the shocking aspect of an FBI director being held at gunpoint, sparking public curiosity and concern. The director carefully chose her words when speaking to the press, emphasizing that the situation had been resolved safely and that she was focused on ensuring accountability and lessons learned rather than blame. The investigation took several days. The officer in question was temporarily suspended pending further review. Internal Affairs examined the events meticulously, discussing every detail: the approach to the car, the handling of the firearm, the communication with dispatch, and the eventual arrival of backup. Each step was dissected to determine what had gone wrong and how similar mistakes could be avoided in the future. Throughout this time, the director maintained her usual responsibilities, continuing to lead investigations and coordinate teams, but she carried with her the weight of the incident, constantly reflecting on the fragility of human perception and the consequences of misjudgment. She shared her experience with trusted colleagues, highlighting how a combination of professionalism, calmness, and clear communication could prevent a life-threatening situation from escalating. By the end of the week, preliminary conclusions were drawn. The officer had violated several key protocols, most notably failing to verify the identity of the person he was stopping. While he had no malicious intent, the reckless nature of his actions could not be ignored. Internal Affairs recommended disciplinary action, emphasizing that accountability was necessary to reinforce proper conduct and prevent future incidents. The director also took steps to debrief her team and other officials within the bureau. She wanted to ensure that the lessons learned were shared broadly, not just within her immediate circle. Her approach was practical and human-centric. She explained what had happened, why the situation had escalated, and how calm, clear-headed responses had prevented a potentially tragic outcome. She also stressed the importance of empathy and understanding, noting that mistakes could happen to anyone, and that the focus should be on learning rather than shaming. During this period, the officer faced mounting pressure. The realization that his actions could have caused serious harm weighed heavily on him. He was questioned repeatedly, each session reinforcing the severity of the incident. The suspension was a sobering reminder that law enforcement authority carried immense responsibility, and that even a moment of misjudgment could have consequences far beyond what he had imagined. As the investigation continued, the director received messages from colleagues, law enforcement officials, and even friends expressing concern and admiration for how she had handled the situation. They were struck by her composure and professionalism, noting that she had remained calm even when faced with extreme danger. The support from others reinforced her belief that maintaining composure and clear communication was crucial in high-pressure situations. The director also thought about the public's perception. She knew that people might question how an experienced FBI official could be put in such a vulnerable position. Her focus remained on education rather than defense. She wanted the story to highlight the importance of proper training, accountability, and communication within law enforcement. She wanted it to serve as a lesson, not a spectacle. Over the next few weeks, the officer's disciplinary process progressed. He was found guilty of misconduct, specifically for failing to properly identify the person he had stopped, and for unnecessarily escalating the situation. The recommendation included a period of jail time, a measure reflecting the seriousness of the error. The ruling sent a strong message across law enforcement communities. Mistakes, even those without malicious intent, could carry severe consequences if they endangered lives. Throughout this time, the director continued her work, balancing the emotional weight of the incident with her professional duties. She remained a figure of calm authority, demonstrating that even in personal encounters with danger, maintaining composure, clear thinking, and professionalism was essential. She met with training officers, sharing her insights and emphasizing the value of human-centric responses during high-pressure situations. By the end of the month, the situation had been largely resolved. The officer had faced consequences, and the Bureau had implemented additional review processes to prevent similar incidents. The director's experience became a reference point for discussions about law enforcement conduct, communication, and the human factors that could influence decision-making in critical moments. The incident remained a vivid memory for the director. It was a reminder that no matter one's experience, knowledge, or position, human error and misjudgment could occur. But it was also a story of resilience, of calmness in the face of danger, and of the power of clear communication to de-escalate potentially deadly situations. It reinforced her commitment to leadership, training, and education, ensuring that the lessons from her experience would help prevent harm to others in the future. Even after the officer's disciplinary action, the director took the time to reflect on the broader implications. She thought about how fear and uncertainty could influence decision-making, how assumptions could cloud judgment, and how important it was for law enforcement to continually evaluate procedures and protocols. Her perspective was clear. Accountability, training, and human understanding were as critical as tactical skills in keeping communities and officers safe. In quiet moments, she would think back to that night on the empty street, the flashing lights, the tense standoff. She would remember the adrenaline, the fear, the strange calmness she felt, and the relief when the situation was finally resolved. It was a moment that could have ended tragically, yet it became a story of learning, reflection, and accountability. The director knew that sharing her experience could help others. She spoke to law enforcement groups, training academies, and even community organizations, emphasizing the human side of policing, the importance of communication, and the consequences of mistakes. Her story became more than just an unusual encounter. It became a teaching moment for anyone involved in law enforcement, leadership, or crisis management. The lessons learned from that night would stay with her forever. They reminded her of the delicate balance between authority and responsibility, the power of composure, and the critical role of empathy and understanding in all human interactions, even in high-stakes situations. The story was not just about an FBI director being held at gunpoint. It was about humanity, accountability, and the enduring importance of calm and clear thinking under pressure. Weeks after the incident, the FBI director still thought about the night she had been pulled over. It had become more than a memory. It was a moment that shaped her perspective on law enforcement, human behavior, and the importance of accountability. The investigation into the officer's actions was still ongoing, and she remained involved, providing details, clarifications, and insights to ensure the review was accurate and fair. The officer's mistake had been serious, but it was important to understand the human side of the story. People made errors, even trained professionals. Fear, stress, and assumptions could cloud judgment, and in law enforcement, the consequences could be severe. The director reflected on how important it was to approach such situations with empathy and understanding, even while maintaining accountability. She knew that by sharing her experience, she could help prevent similar incidents in the future. During this time, she met with internal affairs officials and training officers to review the body camera footage. Every detail of the stop was analyzed. The officer's approach, his words, the way he handled his firearm, and the backup response. Each observation highlighted areas where judgment could have been better. The director's calm explanations and insights helped investigators understand what had happened from her perspective, providing context that the video alone could not capture. As the review continued, discussions arose about the role of communication in law enforcement. The director emphasized how her calm voice and clear words had played a key role in preventing escalation. She described how small gestures like keeping her hands visible and slowly showing her credentials had helped de-escalate the situation. The investigators noted that these actions were vital, demonstrating that even in life-threatening situations, composure could prevent tragedy. Meanwhile, the officer faced increasing scrutiny. Colleagues and supervisors questioned how he had acted so hastily, and discussions about his training and experience became central to the investigation. It was clear that the officer had followed protocol in some ways but had missed critical steps, such as verifying her identity before drawing his weapon. The review was not only about punishment, but also about understanding how mistakes occurred and how to prevent them in the future. The director also reflected on the emotional impact of the incident. Despite her extensive experience with dangerous situations, being at gunpoint was a unique and unnerving experience. She had felt a mix of fear, disbelief, and determination to stay calm. She realized that moments like these revealed the human side of law enforcement, showing that even those who trained for danger could experience vulnerability. She shared her experience with her team, emphasizing lessons in patience, communication, and situational awareness. She encouraged them to always consider human factors in high-pressure situations, reminding them that assumptions could lead to mistakes. Her story became a teaching moment, illustrating the delicate balance between authority, responsibility, and empathy. As the investigation continued, the officers' actions were examined in detail. Internal affairs highlighted not only the immediate mistake, but also the potential risks of improper training, unclear protocols, and lack of awareness. The director's calm handling of the situation contrasted sharply with the officers' hasty decisions, demonstrating the importance of experience, preparation, and self-control. Public interest in the story grew. Some were surprised that an FBI director could be placed in such a vulnerable position, while others focused on the officer's misconduct. The director chose her words carefully in interviews and discussions, always emphasizing learning and accountability over blame. She wanted the story to inspire better practices in law enforcement, not to create division or sensationalism. During debriefings, the director also discussed the psychological impact of such encounters. She explained how sudden threats could trigger fear, anxiety, and fight-or-flight responses. By staying calm, she had prevented her own reactions from escalating the situation. This insight helped trainers understand the importance of preparing officers to remain composed and responsive under pressure. The officer, meanwhile, was facing disciplinary measures. Suspension and potential jail time were discussed, reflecting the seriousness of the incident. Internal affairs stressed that consequences were necessary to reinforce proper conduct and protect both officers and civilians. The director understood this, knowing that accountability was essential for maintaining trust and safety within the community. The situation also prompted broader conversations about law enforcement training. Leadership teams reviewed protocols emphasizing verification, communication, and de-escalation. The director's experience became a reference point, illustrating how calm, rational responses could prevent unnecessary harm. Her insights shaped discussions about improving procedures, training officers to think clearly, and preparing them for unpredictable situations. As the weeks passed, the director noticed changes in her colleagues' approach to fieldwork. There was greater awareness of the human element in enforcement, increased attention to communication, and more emphasis on de-escalation techniques. Her experience, though frightening, had become a catalyst for positive change within the Bureau. The officer's disciplinary process moved forward. Investigators concluded that while his actions were not malicious, they were reckless and could have endangered lives. The decision to hold him accountable reflected the principle that authority must always be exercised with responsibility. The director supported this, understanding that accountability was not about punishment alone but about reinforcing safety and trust. Through all of this, she continued to lead her team, balancing the demands of her role with the personal reflection that the incident had prompted. She remained a model of calm professionalism and human understanding. Her approach demonstrated that leadership was not only about authority, but also about empathy, communication, and the ability to navigate unexpected challenges. The director also shared her story outside the Bureau, speaking to community groups, law enforcement trainees, and professional organizations. She highlighted the lessons learned, emphasizing that human factors, clear communication, and calm composure were critical in preventing dangerous situations from escalating. Her story became more than an unusual event. It became a tool for education and reflection. As the officer faced the consequences of his actions, the director continued to think about the broader implications. She reflected on how fear and assumptions could cloud judgment, how human error could have serious consequences, and how critical it was to maintain calm and clarity under pressure. She knew that sharing these lessons could save lives, prevent mistakes, and improve the quality of law enforcement. Eventually, the officer was sentenced, and the disciplinary action served as a clear reminder of the importance of protocol and judgment. The director felt a sense of closure, knowing that the situation had been addressed responsibly and that the lessons would continue to inform training and practice. Even after resolution, the memory of that night stayed with her. She remembered the flashing lights, the tense standoff, and the unusual position she had found herself in. It was a powerful reminder of the fragility of human judgment, the importance of calmness, and the enduring value of professionalism. It reinforced her commitment to leadership, communication, and the ongoing effort to improve law enforcement practices for the safety of everyone involved. The director's story, once a private experience, had become a meaningful narrative about accountability, resilience, and human behavior. She understood that even in positions of authority, one could encounter vulnerability, yet by maintaining composure, clear thinking, and empathy, she had turned a dangerous encounter into an opportunity for learning, reflection, and positive change. It was a story that would influence not only her career, but also the practices and perspectives of those around her for years to come. After the officer's actions were brought to light, the FBI director realized that the incident was more than a personal experience. It was a chance to bring meaningful change to law enforcement practices. She spent time reflecting on every detail of that night, thinking about how fear, assumptions, and split-second decisions could escalate a situation, even for the most experienced professionals. The incident had shaken her, but it also reinforced her understanding of human behavior, training, and the importance of accountability. The investigation into the officer's conduct continued, and the director worked closely with internal affairs, providing her first-hand account of the events. She explained how each moment had unfolded from her perspective, highlighting the subtle ways in which calm communication and measured actions prevented a worse outcome. Her insight was critical, giving investigators context that video footage and witness statements alone could not capture. It became increasingly clear that the officer had acted recklessly. While he had no intention to harm, his failure to follow basic verification procedures and his quick escalation of force had created a potentially deadly situation. The director understood that human error was a factor, but she also emphasized that accountability was necessary to ensure such mistakes were not repeated. The officer's actions served as a reminder that authority came with responsibility, and that even trained professionals could make dangerous mistakes if protocols were ignored. The Bureau took the incident seriously, using it as a case study for improving training and operational procedures. Leadership teams examined how officers handled high-pressure encounters, emphasizing the importance of verification, clear communication, and maintaining composure under stress. The director shared her experiences in workshops and briefings, helping colleagues understand the human side of law enforcement and the potential consequences of misjudgment. She also addressed the emotional impact of the encounter. Being at gunpoint, even for a brief period, was frightening. She reflected on how fear could affect anyone, no matter their experience or position. By remaining calm and deliberate, she was able to prevent panic and de-escalate the situation. Her insights underscored the value of training that incorporates both tactical skills and psychological preparedness. Meanwhile, the officer faced increasing consequences. Internal Affairs determined that he had violated several key protocols and recommended disciplinary actions, including suspension and jail time. The officer struggled to comprehend the severity of his mistakes, realizing that a moment of poor judgment could have resulted in serious harm. The process served as a stark reminder that accountability was not optional. It was essential to maintaining trust, safety, and integrity within law enforcement. As the officer's disciplinary process unfolded, the director remained engaged, ensuring that the lessons from her experience would be shared and applied. She spoke with training officers, investigators, and leadership teams about the importance of human-centric approaches, emphasizing empathy, careful assessment, and effective communication. Her story became a teaching tool, highlighting how calm, rational actions could prevent tragedy even in tense encounters. The incident also sparked broader discussions within the law enforcement community. Questions arose about how officers were trained, how split-second decisions were made, and how to balance authority with responsibility. The director's account was frequently cited in these discussions, providing a real-world example of the challenges officers faced and the importance of measured responses. Her perspective helped shift the focus from blame alone to understanding, prevention, and improvement. During debriefings, she emphasized that mistakes were human, but patterns of behavior needed to be addressed. She spoke about the importance of verification, staying calm, and considering the potential consequences of each action. She also highlighted how body language, tone of voice, and clear communication could influence the outcome of a tense situation. Her insights resonated with officers, training teams, and leadership alike. At the same time, the director focused on her own emotional recovery. Experiencing fear and vulnerability was unsettling, but it also reinforced her belief in resilience and composure. She reflected on the night, recognizing that staying calm had been critical. It was a reminder that no matter how much training one had, facing unexpected situations could be challenging, and maintaining professionalism under pressure was a skill worth honing continuously. The officer's punishment was finalized, and he was held accountable for his reckless actions. The outcome sent a clear message. All law enforcement personnel were expected to uphold their duties responsibly, and errors that endangered others would have consequences. The director understood the importance of this message, knowing that it would influence the behavior and decisions of officers for years to come. The director also engaged in outreach and education, sharing her experience with law enforcement trainees and other organizations. She highlighted the human factors in law enforcement, the importance of communication, and the necessity of verifying information before taking action. Her story became more than a personal account. It became a resource for learning, reflection, and improvement across multiple levels of law enforcement. Through all of this, she remained a figure of calm authority. Her leadership and professionalism inspired colleagues, reinforcing the importance of patience, clarity, and empathy. She demonstrated that even when faced with danger or unexpected circumstances, maintaining composure and thinking critically could prevent escalation and save lives. As she continued her work, the director often reflected on the broader lessons from that night. She thought about how fear and assumptions could influence decisions, how critical verification was, and how small actions could prevent serious consequences. She shared these insights consistently, helping others understand that leadership was not just about authority, but about responsibility, awareness, and human understanding. The incident became a defining moment in her career, shaping her approach to training, communication, and decision-making. It reminded her and others that even in positions of authority, mistakes could happen, and that the way people responded to them could make all the difference. By staying calm, communicating clearly, and emphasizing accountability, she had turned a frightening experience into an opportunity for growth and improvement. The story also highlighted the importance of organizational support. The Bureau's response, the thorough investigation, and the implementation of new training and review procedures all contributed to preventing similar incidents in the future. The director's collaboration with internal affairs, training teams, and leadership ensured that the lessons learned would have a lasting impact. Even as the officer faced his punishment, the director focused on the positive outcomes. She saw how the incident led to greater awareness, improved protocols, and more comprehensive training. It reinforced her belief that challenges and mistakes could be transformed into opportunities for growth, learning, and enhanced safety for both officers and the public. Ultimately, the director's experience became more than a story of fear and confrontation. It became a story of accountability, resilience, and the human side of law enforcement. She used the lessons she had learned to educate, guide, and inspire others, ensuring that the difficult night on the city street would have a meaningful and lasting impact on the way law enforcement approached high-pressure situations. The director's calm, professional, and human-centric response had not only prevented tragedy, but had also created a blueprint for better practice, safer procedures, and stronger leadership within the Bureau and beyond. Months after the incident, the FBI director continued to reflect on the night she had been pulled over and held at gunpoint. The experience had left a lasting impression on her, not because of fear alone, but because of the lessons it carried for her, her colleagues, and the broader law enforcement community. She understood that this unusual situation could be used to improve training, communication, and leadership practices across the board. She often recalled the moment the officer approached her vehicle, the tension in the air, and the sudden awareness of vulnerability she had felt. It was a reminder that, no matter one's experience or rank, situations could escalate quickly if assumptions replaced careful observation. The director had learned that maintaining composure, speaking clearly, and showing patience could prevent disaster even when facing extreme stress. The officer who had pulled her over faced the consequences of his actions. After a thorough investigation, he was held accountable for misconduct, including reckless behavior and failure to verify the identity of a law enforcement official before escalating force. The process had not been easy for anyone involved. It required honest assessments, careful documentation, and a willingness to examine human error without overlooking accountability. The director viewed the outcome as a necessary step in reinforcing the standards of law enforcement and protecting both officers and the public. In the months that followed, the director used her experience to teach others. She met with training teams, leadership groups, and law enforcement academies to share her story and provide insight into handling high-pressure situations. She highlighted how human behavior, communication, and decision-making intersected in critical moments. Her calm, measured approach served as a model for officers who might one day face unexpected challenges. She emphasized that mistakes could happen to anyone, regardless of experience or training. The difference, she explained, lay in how individuals responded. Remaining calm, verifying information, and using clear communication were tools that could prevent mistakes from turning into tragedies. She also spoke about empathy, stressing that understanding the human factors behind actions, both one's own and others, was essential for effective law enforcement. The Bureau took the incident seriously, using it as an opportunity to review policies and improve practices. Protocols were updated, training programs enhanced, and discussions about decision-making under pressure became more frequent. The director's insights were central to these efforts, and her story became a case study in professional development, emphasizing that learning from mistakes was as important as enforcing rules. The director's own reflection continued as well. She considered how moments of fear and tension could reveal character, leadership, and resilience. Being at gunpoint had tested her ability to stay composed, communicate effectively, and manage her own emotions. It reminded her that even in a position of authority, vulnerability was a natural part of human experience. She took this understanding into her work, encouraging her team to recognize the importance of both personal and professional growth. Public interest in the story remained high, though the director carefully managed her interactions with the media. She focused on education rather than sensationalism, explaining that her experience was a lesson in human behavior, accountability, and the importance of clear communication. By framing the story this way, she ensured it had a constructive impact, inspiring officers and civilians alike to think critically about authority, responsibility, and safety. As she continued her leadership work, she noticed changes in how colleagues approached high-stress situations. There was more emphasis on verification, patience, and careful observation. Officers discussed her story frequently, analyzing what had happened and considering how they could apply the lessons to their own work. The incident had become a touchstone for understanding the delicate balance between authority, responsibility, and human judgment. The officer who had caused the incident had completed his disciplinary process, and the lessons were clear. Even brief lapses in judgment could have significant consequences. His experience served as a warning, highlighting the importance of training, adherence to protocol, and awareness of human factors. The director emphasized that accountability was not about punishment alone, but about ensuring the safety and trust of everyone involved. She also reflected on the broader implications for law enforcement culture. The incident underscored the need for continuous evaluation of practices, open communication, and support systems that allowed officers to learn from mistakes. Her experience became a blueprint for training programs, emphasizing that awareness, empathy, and composure were just as critical as tactical skills. Over time, she shared her insights beyond law enforcement circles. Speaking at conferences and community events, she highlighted how human factors affected decision-making, the importance of maintaining professionalism under pressure, and the consequences of errors in judgment. Her story became a resource for education, helping people understand the complexities of law enforcement and the value of calm, rational responses to unexpected situations. The director also focused on personal growth. The incident had reinforced her understanding of resilience, emotional intelligence, and leadership. She recognized that staying calm in a life-threatening moment was not just about training, it was about self-awareness, preparation, and the ability to manage fear. These lessons became part of her approach to mentoring others, shaping the next generation.